Hello everyone, Charles Coleman here, presenting to you an amazing piece by the composer, James MacMillan, great composer from Scotland. It's funny, when we think about music that comes out of the UK, Scotland is not one of the top ones. There are many great composers from there, a lot of whom we don't know, but there are a handful. I mean, there's William Wallace. No, not the William Wallace that Mel Gibson did. You know, they may take our lives, but they will not take our freedom. No, there's another William Wallace that died in 1940. There's also the Scottish composer Patrick Doyle, who is in Hollywood writing some of the best film scores that he did with Kenneth Branagh. He did Thor, and he did all sorts of great film scores. But then there's also one of my heroes, James MacMillan. His music is very expressive. It can be violent at times, very lyrical at times, but there is an overall tonal base to it. He's written many great works, including Veni Veni Emmanuel for percussion and orchestra that he wrote for Evelyn Glennie. He's written 5 symphonies, a couple of piano concertos, lots of chamber music, and all sorts of great pieces. But the work that gave him more public notice would be The Confession of Isobel Gowdie, an amazing 25-minute work for orchestra, originally premiered at the 1990 BBC Proms with the BBC Scottish Symphony Orchestra under James MacMillan. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. This piece was composed in reference to the tragic story of a young Scottish girl from the 17th century named Isabel Gowdy, who was accused of witchcraft and subsequently burned at the stake for it. We don't know the circumstances that led to this, but we do only know that she was documented for having been killed for it. Unfortunately, for some reason, there have been all these devil-worshipping, Satanistic type cults that have looked at Isabel Gowdy as an actual witch. You know, books have been written on this, and there are all these weird people that want to utilize the myth. And James MacMillan basically said he had enough and wanted to write this piece, which essentially is the Requiem that Isabel Gowdy never had, basically giving her her dignity back. And when this piece was premiered at the BBC Proms in 1990, the crowd was really enthusiastic. One critic said that the crowd reaction brought back the kind of reaction that Benjamin Britten got when he premiered a piece. As far as the music itself, the piece starts off with this really lyrical section in the strings, giving kind of an image about the person that Isabel Gowdy probably really was. And then it goes to this middle part, which is very dissonant and very violent, with all these sustained notes throughout, giving kind of maybe an idea of what Isabel Gowdy went through when being questioned and subsequently tortured by the authorities, accusing her of witchcraft, forcing her to confess to it. I think MacMillan quotes from various religious passages in the Roman Catholic Church, and he then has these 13 short chords blasted out in the orchestra, I guess implying Satan, you know, 13, Satan. There's a lot of stuff going on here. And then the music kind of gets into a fast tempo with these da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da kind of motivic. And it kind of revolves under that kind of motivic thing. And then all of a sudden the orchestra starts to go bum, 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 bum. After all that revolving, it gets stuck on a B natural, which climaxes with the orchestra blasting. And then all of a sudden it hits a wall. And we hear these mournful lower strings that just suddenly come in, and then the loud chords of the torture and the low strings kind of go against each other. Subsequently, the lyrical moment takes over and leads to the string passage that started the whole piece, again representing the innocence of this woman. And as the orchestra calms down in this lyrical passage, all of a sudden a note emerges, the note C, and not just any C, the middle C that the whole orchestra plays, though that's the one that goes, da, and it starts out very quietly and just evolves into this quadruple fortissimo and then cuts off. And that's the end of the piece. Really amazing work. There have been 5 recordings of this, including the first one with James MacMillan, along with other great conductors, Marin Alsop, Colin Davis, Osmovanska, and they're all great recordings, although I think the Colin Davis one's a little stiff and slow, but that's just one man's opinion. But I do have a favorite among these, and that's the more later recording by the composer himself, James MacMillan and the BBC Philharmonic on the Chandos record label. It's just as good as any of the other performances, as I mentioned before, but this has the best sound. Powerful performance. It also includes MacMillan's Symphony No. 3 with the subtitle Silence, another masterpiece, which takes into account the silences in between various passages of the music, the power of silence when it starts and when it starts again, on its good side and its bad sides. It's too complicated to go into right now. Maybe I'll talk about that Symphony No. 3 some other time. But the performance of the Confession of Isobel Gowdie by the composer himself is a wonderful performance. Again, all the elements work, the sound and the orchestra, lots of stuff here. The other performances are very good. Osmolvanska does a really fast version, but this one is another great version, and it's the one that I recommend. By the way, I should mention that although I'm not allowed to play this recording due to copyright issues, there is a version of this on YouTube that you can see in the description below. James MacMillan, wonderful composer, deserves to be heard by everybody. All the best.